Amara's thumb hit send before her brain caught up with her hand. The message was gone. Delivered. Read in less than 4 seconds. She stared at the screen, waiting for her best friend's reply to explode with laughing emojis and "girl spill everything." Instead, 3 dots blinked. Then 1 line. "Thank you." Her stomach dropped. Her best friend never replied like that. Never. She scrolled up to the top of the thread, checked the contact photo, and felt every drop of blood leave her face. It wasn't her best friend. It was her boss. If you love a slow burn that makes you scream into a pillow before it even gets good, hit subscribe right now, because this one is going to take its time wrecking you, and you don't want to miss a single part of it. Like the video, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and let's start from the beginning. 3 weeks earlier, Amara Williams had landed in Seoul with 2 suitcases and a promise to herself. Never again would she let a man make her feel small. Her last relationship had ended with her standing in a room full of people while he humiliated her for sport, and she had rebuilt herself since then, piece by piece. She had not moved across the world to fall for anyone, especially not her new boss. Kang Ji-hoon made that promise very difficult to keep. He was 31, sharp-jawed, impossibly composed, and cold in a way that made grown executives stammer through their own slides. In her first week, she watched him sit through an entire presentation without blinking, then dismantle it in 4 sentences, calmly without raising his voice once. Everyone in the room looked like they wanted to disappear. Amara just watched his hands, the way he tapped 1 finger against the table when he was thinking, the way his jaw flexed right before he spoke. She told herself she wasn't affected. She was lying and she knew it. That night, giddy and exhausted, she opened her phone to text her best friend and typed exactly what she'd been thinking all week without a second thought. Wrong number. Disaster. 2 words, thank you. She didn't sleep. She rehearsed resignation speeches in the bathroom mirror. She imagined 3 different ways he might humiliate her in front of the whole office. None of them prepared her for what actually happened. The next morning, she walked into his office already grieving her own career. He didn't look up right away. He slid a folder across the desk, calm as glass. "Good morning, Ms. Williams." "Good morning, sir." Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. He looked at her then, really looked in a way he hadn't before, like he was recalculating something. "And thank you," he said, "for your honesty." She nearly dropped the folder. He didn't bring it up again that day, or the next, but something had shifted, quiet and dangerous, and she felt it every time he was in the room. It started small. She'd walk into the break room and find her coffee order already sitting by the machine. The exact ratio she liked, cream first then sugar, something she'd mentioned exactly once in passing weeks earlier. She assumed it was a coincidence until it happened 4 days in a row. She started noticing him noticing her. The way his eyes would find her across a crowded conference room before anyone else's. The way he'd linger a half-second too long when he handed her documents, his fingers close enough to hers that neither of them moved first. One Thursday, he called her into his office at the end of the day for what he said was a scheduling matter. There was no scheduling matter. He sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled to his forearms, watching her the entire time she stood there confused, until finally he leaned back in his chair. "Still think your boss is hot?" Her whole face went up in flames. That was a mistake. A wrong number. It doesn't count. It counted enough for you to remember every detail of it just now. "I hate you." The corner of his mouth pulled, just barely. "No, you don't." She left his office that night, walking faster than necessary, heart hammering, refusing to admit he was right. Weeks passed like that, small moments stacking on top of each other until they became something neither of them could call small anymore. He started finding reasons to keep her later than everyone else, reasons that had nothing to do with actual deadlines. Reviewing a report that didn't need reviewing. Asking her opinion on decisions he'd clearly already made. She started staying later on purpose too, telling herself it was just good career instinct knowing it wasn't. One night, the office had emptied out around 11. Everyone gone except the two of them and the hum of the building settling into silence. Amara was collecting her things when the sky opened up outside, rain hammering the windows and sheets. "You don't have an umbrella," Ji-hoon said, not a question. "I'll catch a cab." "I'll drive you." She wanted to argue. She didn't. The car ride was quiet except for the wipers and the rain, his hand resting on the gear shift inches from hers, neither of them acknowledging the space between them or how badly they both wanted to close it. At a red light, he glanced over. "Why do you always act like you don't care about anyone?" she asked, before she could stop herself. He was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, softly, "Because caring about someone gives them the power to hurt you." "Did someone hurt you?" "My last engagement chose my father's money over me. Publicly, at an event with 300 guests." He said it flatly, like a fact he'd repeated so many times it had stopped hurting and started just existing. "I haven't let anyone close enough to do that again. I'm not her." He looked at her, really looked, headlight sliding across his face. "I know." The light turned green. Neither of them moved for a second longer than they should have. That was the night she stopped fighting what she felt and started fearing it instead. If you're already holding your breath, this is exactly why you need to subscribe, because the next part of the story is where everything gets real, and you are not ready. Comment below if you'd have replied to that text too. 2 weeks later, Ji-hoon told her, almost carelessly, that she'd be joining him on a business trip to Paris for a 3-day negotiation with an international luxury partner. "You know the numbers better than anyone on my team," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "I need you there." She spent the flight pretending to read a magazine while very aware of his shoulder inches from hers, his arm brushing hers every time he reached for his water. She spent it failing to pretend she wasn't aware of it at all. Paris in early autumn was cold and golden and unfairly beautiful, and for the first 2 days it was strictly business, back-to-back meetings, translators, spreadsheets, Ji-hoon in full CEO mode, sharp and untouchable in front of the partners. But on the second night, after the final meeting ran long and the partners left for their hotel, he turned to her in the lobby and said 4 words that undid every professional boundary she'd built. "Have dinner with me." "Is that a work dinner?" "Does it need to be?" They ended up at a small restaurant 2 streets from the hotel, the kind of place with candlelight and no English menu. And for the first time since she'd met him, Ji-hoon talked about things that had nothing to do with the company. He told her about learning piano as a child because his father insisted every heir play an instrument for photographs, never because anyone actually wanted him to enjoy it. He told her he hated the taste of champagne, but drank it anyway at every event because it was expected. She told him about her mother's cooking, about the ache of being far from home, about the ex who'd made her feel like an accessory instead of a person. "He was a fool," Ji-hoon said, simply like it settled the matter. "You don't know him." "I know what it looks like when someone's been taught they're not enough. I see it in the mirror most days." She didn't have a response to that. She just reached across the table and covered his hand with hers, and for once he didn't pull away. They walked back to the hotel along the river. The city lit up gold against the dark water, both of them quiet in a way that felt full instead of empty. Outside her hotel room door, he stopped, and for a long moment neither of them said anything at all. Amara. Her name in his mouth sounded different than it ever had in a boardroom. "Don't," she whispered, even though she didn't mean it. "You're my boss." "I know." He didn't step back. "I've known since the moment you sent that message to the wrong number, and I have thought about very little else since." "This is a terrible idea." "Yes." Neither of them moved. He was the one who finally closed the distance, slow enough that she could have stopped him, slow enough that she had every chance to say no. She didn't. The kiss was soft at first, careful, like he was giving her every opportunity to pull away, and when she didn't, when her hand curled into the front of his shirt instead, it deepened into something neither of them had permission to want. When they finally broke apart, foreheads still touching, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. I don't regret that, he said. I don't either. That's the problem. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, something achingly gentle from a man the entire company thought incapable of gentleness. Then let it be a problem we figure out together. They didn't have an answer that night, but she went to sleep with the memory of his mouth against hers and woke up unable to stop smiling at absolutely nothing. And for the rest of the trip, something had changed between them permanently, whether either of them was ready for it or not. Back in Seoul, they tried to keep it contained. Stolen moments in the elevator when no one else got on, his hand finding the small of her back for half a second too long as he guided her through a doorway. Late-night calls that started as work check-ins and ended 2 hours later with neither of them wanting to hang up first. It was good. It was terrifying. And it could not stay hidden forever. If your heart is doing something right now, that's the story working exactly as it should. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when this secret starts to unravel. And like the video of Paris just ruined you a little, the unraveling started with Yoon Seo-jin. Amara learned from office gossip in the break room what Ji-hoon had never told her directly. His family had already chosen his future wife. Seo-jin, daughter of another powerful business dynasty, groomed since childhood for exactly this arrangement. Ji-hoon had refused the match outright more than once, but refusal hadn't stopped his father from continuing to plan around it, and it certainly hadn't stopped Seo-jin from showing up at the company unannounced days later, cornering Amara by the elevators with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. I know about Paris, Seo-jin said, not even bothering to soften it. Amara's stomach turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me. I've known Ji-hoon since we were children. I know when he's distracted, and lately he is very distracted. She stepped closer. Know your place. He was promised to me before you ever set foot in this country. And a foreign employee is not going to change generations of arrangement. Amara held her spine straight, even as her hands shook at her sides. He's not a merger. He gets to choose. We'll see how much choice he has when his father finds out. The rumors started within days. Whispers in the hallway that stopped when Amara walked past. Someone had seen her getting into his car after hours. Someone had seen them in Paris, close, unprofessional. By the end of the week, half the office believed she'd slept her way into his favor, and the weight of every sideways glance sat on her chest like something physical. She couldn't watch his career, his reputation, his family's trust unravel because of feelings she hadn't even meant to let herself have. So she did the only thing that felt like protecting him. She typed her resignation letter with shaking hands and left it on his desk without a word, and walked out before she could change her mind. He found the letter an hour later. He found her outside the building minutes after that, the wind pulling at her coat, her eyes red-rimmed. Why are you leaving? His voice had none of its usual control left in it. Because I'm your employee, Ji-hoon. Her voice cracked on his name. And I'm in love with you. I can't be the reason your whole life falls apart. He crossed the distance between them in 2 steps. You think you're destroying my life. She nodded, unable to speak. Amara. He took her face in both hands, forcing her to look at him. You are the first person who has ever made me want a life outside this company. You didn't destroy anything. You gave me something worth fighting for. For one long moment, standing in the cold with the city moving around them, nothing else existed. Not the rumors, not the company, not his father's plans. Just his hands on her face, and the truth finally spoken out loud between them. Then his phone rang. His father's name lit up the screen. The engagement announcement, his father said, would happen that very night, whether Ji-hoon showed up or not. If your heart is racing, this is exactly why you need to subscribe, because what happens at that engagement changes everything, and you do not want to find out about it from someone else's comment section. Like this video if you're rooting for them right now. The ballroom was full of cameras and champagne and powerful families arranged like chess pieces. Yoon Seo-jin poised at the front in a gown clearly chosen for this exact moment, waiting for a man everyone assumed would walk toward her. Ji-hoon walked in with Amara on his arm instead. The room went utterly silent. Somewhere a champagne glass stopped halfway to someone's lips. His father's face went rigid. "Who is this woman?" Ji-hoon didn't hesitate, didn't lower his voice, didn't care who was recording it. He took Amara's hand in front of every camera, every family, every expectation he'd spent his whole life carrying. "The woman I love." Gasps rippled through the crowd. His father's voice dropped into something colder than Amara had ever heard from Ji-hoon himself. "Choose carefully. Walk away from this arrangement, and you walk away from everything you were born to inherit." Ji-hoon didn't even blink. "Then take the company." Amara's heart nearly stopped. She grabbed his arm before he could turn fully away from his father. "I don't want you to lose yourself for me." He looked at her, and for the first time since the day she'd met him, his eyes held nothing guarded at all. "I'm not losing myself. I'm finally finding who I want to be." His father's fury cracked, just slightly, at the sight of his son standing there unmoved, unwilling to bend, choosing something real over something arranged. It didn't resolve that night. Fathers like his didn't surrender easily, but it was the first time Ji-hoon had ever stood in that ballroom and meant every word he said, and Amara realized she would rather lose everything at his side than keep anything without him. Months later, the company had not collapsed, and neither had they. Amara had built her own thriving creative division from the ground up, no longer just an outsider trying to survive Seoul, but a woman who had carved out her own place in it. Ji-hoon had spent those months slowly, carefully repairing what could be repaired with his family on terms he chose this time instead of terms chosen for him. They no longer hid in elevators or whispered behind closed doors. They simply were in front of everyone, the way it should have always been. One evening, her phone buzzed on her desk. A text from Ji-hoon. "OMG, my employee is so beautiful. I think I'm falling for her." She laughed out loud, alone in her office, and typed back, "Wrong number?" His reply came instantly. "No, this time I sent it to the right person." She looked up, and there he was, leaning in her doorway with that same unreadable expression from their very first meeting. Except now she knew exactly what it meant. "Thank you," he said softly, "for accidentally falling for me." She crossed the room and stopped right in front of him. "Thank you for replying. If this story gave you butterflies, chills, or made you yell at your screen somewhere in the middle, that's exactly what it was supposed to do. Subscribe now so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment with your favorite scene, and hit like before you go, because stories like this only keep coming with your support. See you in the next one.